So we have this issue with Cantonists, children that were taken away from their parents during the times of the Tsar, and the Mitteler Rebbe has a mimer to explain why this was done, why the Eibishter caused these events to come about. He first starts off explaining what does it mean, a mitzvah by the Eibishter. What does it mean the Eibishter wants you to do something for him? The truth is that this that the Eibishter wants you to do a mitzvah is a lot higher than anything that we could understand. And this that certain mitzvahs came into understanding, and they were given reasons, is only to be able to answer to the Goyim or anyone that asks us what's the logic behind it. And as we know that Chukim don't have that reason, even that external reason. But the truth is that both the Chukim and the Eidos and Mishpatim, they also come from a place that's higher than understanding. And the only way that we can relate to them is just like a little child that is repeating over words from a very wise man. And even though the child doesn't understand the depth behind it, and he really doesn't get any of the wisdom at all, he just memorizes it over and over again so that he can repeat over the words. So he's left with just a bunch of words that, comparative to other words that he has, are equal and have no meaning at all to himself. Obviously, to the Eibishter himself, these words have a lot of meaning. And when the Eibishter made the world, he wanted to do goodness for people. And the way to accomplish this is he gave us mitzvahs. He didn't want that the goodness that he gave us should be for free. We should feel that we deserve it or earned it. So he made that we should work for what we're doing. We should do a mitzvah. And by that, he'll be able to reward us with the kindness that he wanted to give us from day one. Now, the problem comes up is if a person does the mitzvah just for this outside reason of the reward, you end up not doing what the Eibishter really wants. So a mitzvah really is contained of two things. There's the actual Maisa part, but there's also the feelings behind it, the Av and Yir, that are the wings that allow it to fly up to its ultimate height, where the mitzvah originated in Kesser. So we have this conversation between the Eibishter and Avram Avinu, that the Eibishter told them that the Yidden will one day need to repent for things they did bad, and they'll be able to bring karbonis. And Avram Avinu wanted to know what will be when we won't have the Beis Hamikdash. And the Eibishter said that at that point they'll be able to learn about the karbonis, and with that alone it's as if they brought the carbon. So now the question comes up is, if that's the case, that through learning alone you could accomplish what a carbon accomplishes, why would you even need to bring a carbon during the times of the Beis Hamikdash? You could just learn about it even during that time. So the learning should apply all over. So the answer is that in truth, a mitzvah really means doing what the Eibishter wants. Wherever you find yourself, if you're in a position that you could do more, where you could actually do a Maisa for the Eibishter, so the only way you could actually express that feeling of wanting to connect to the Eibishter and doing his mitzvah by actually bringing the carbon. If that possibility is not available, so then you fulfill it through learning about it. But the point is that you're going out of your way to do anything you can to follow what you're told to do. In that is where the mitzvah lies. In trying your heart out through Mesiras Nefesh to do exactly what you can possibly do. Sometimes it'll fall short. Sometimes it'll be punk fakert, that you won't even be able to do the mitzvah. And with this alone, that a person has pain from not being able to do the mitzvah, Hashem considers it as if you did the mitzvah itself. Now, why is that? Because the opposite side of pain is enjoyment. In general, the Eibishter wants us to do his mitzvahs through enjoyment, through simcha shel mitzvah. But where a person cannot do the mitzvah, like for example, all those mitzvahs that were taken away after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and he left us with 86 mitzvahs. The way to do those mitzvahs that we don't have is by learning about them and having tsar by not being able to perform them. Because since tsar and tainug are two opposite ends, so you accomplish the same thing. You can reach out through these wings of love and fear. You could reach out to Kesser through the pain when you don't have the opportunity to do it through simcha. And the same thing exists, let's say if we're talking about reading about the Korban Pesach, learning about the Korban Pesach, on Erev Pesach, we say that if a person is a Yir Shemayim, will have that tsar that he can't bring that Korban, and that'll cause that the learning about the mitzvah, the wings to the mitzvah will be that pain that the person has that he can't bring it. Or similarly, we find after Tikkun Chatzos, the Torah that you learn after the crying that a person was mechaper on the Zafanis, that a person learns Torah afterwards until the sun comes up, is done through Simcha. The learning is done through Simcha because the whole point of the mitzvah, the whole point of the learning is all to reach that point in Keser. So in general, learning Torah alone brings a person's neshama to Chachma Vatzilus, which is below Keser. But what enables that learning should go up to Keser alone is depending on what we're talking about. If he cannot do the mitzvah through the tsar that he has while learning about that Korban Oila, it causes that as if you brought the Oila and you reached the Keser alone. Like the example that we say Cantonists and the Zam Kaim before davening is a person is supposed to have bittul and achna before davening, and in order to accomplish person should break himself is by feeling the pain that he can't bring a Korban. Now all this will help us understand why is it that these Cantonists had to suffer and go through what they went through. So to be clear, the only reason why the Eibishter removed his mitzvahs after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, it says that as a deer turns around while it's running away to stare at you, so the same thing, the Eibishter, after the Churban, which he took away all of his mitzvahs, and there was the stalkus of the iris. The iris went back up into the original place. It says elsewhere that El Chavashuva Al Makaymi, the Eibishter goes up to a very, very high place during the whole Zman HaGalos. Obviously, the more pain the Galos, the longer the Galos, the higher the spot that he's returning to, which will cause that later to come down from a higher place. The Ratzei will equal the Shuv, will return from that place, will have much higher areas. But what happened after the Churban, that all the mitzvahs were taken away, the Eibishter turned his head back around to face us, to face the Yidden, and the remaining mitzvahs were given back to us. The Pei Zayin mitzvahs were returned to the Yidden, the mitzvahs aseh. Now in general, mitzvahs lois aseh were never batal. An example he gives is like a doctor that tells a patient to stay away from certain foods and certain cold temperatures, and then the doctor says, and after that I'll prescribe the medicine that you need. So the Maimer says that it doesn't matter the amount of the medicine, which in our case would refer to mitzvahs aseh. What matters is the patient guards himself from all of those negative things and negative foods, which in our case refers to lois aseh. So if a person guards himself completely from all lois aseh, so then the mitzvahs aseh can bring down oirish. If God forbid the other way around, he writes there that even one lois aseh can block that the mitzvahs aseh can't bring down what they're supposed to bring down into this world. So in truth, the reason why the Eibishter's light was removed from our world after the Churban is it wasn't done as a punishment. The example given is when someone has a friend and they love that friend, and anything the friend does that will cause negative feelings, so that love will dissipate, will go away. And the same thing here is the Eibishter is really looking forward to be able to tava teva hativ, to be able to give kindness and goodness to us. And when we share that by doing averes, so automatically the light goes away. It doesn't have a feeling anymore that it wants to come down to our world. And that's not a punishment. As a side thing, as a secondary thing, in order for our neshamas to separate that bad, that blemish that is clinging to the neshama after a person does something wrong, it's actually a kindness that in order to wipe that off, the person goes through Yisurim. But that's separate from the fact that the Eibishter, his light, so to speak, is removed from our world whenever Yidden sin. So now getting back to the story of these Cantonists, the Eibishter, after going through all this time in Galus, felt that everyone's just doing mitzvahs and anoshim l'moda, that no one's doing it from the heart. So even these 86 mitzvahs that he gave us that we should do, we're not reaching the point that you're supposed to reach, which is keser. There's no wings, there's no love and fear, there's no heart in what we're doing. So since the world is dependent on mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael does, and if the Klal Yisrael is not doing mitzvahs, so the world should technically be destroyed. So that's what took place. The Chayil Shemayim were quaking that what's going to be with the whole world after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And it continues during that time of the Cantonists that the Eibusher felt that there's no feeling towards his mitzvahs, so he wanted to destroy the world. And he took these neshamas, these boys that were taken away to the army. The Eibusher caused these soldiers to go and cut beards off of these young men and stop them from keeping Shabbos, in order that whatever pain caused that Yid that wanted to keep Shabbos and he couldn't, it proved that he Taka does have that Rusad Liba, he does have that feeling in his heart towards the Eibusher's mitzvahs, because like we said before, that the opposite of Tainug is Tsar, and this Tsar brings about that the Taka is a Tainug in the Eibusher's mitzvahs, and we're not just doing it mitzvahs on Nashim L'Moda. And even more so, whenever these soldiers did get a chance to do a mitzvah properly, and they rejoiced that they had that chance, and they did it with tremendous feeling, that also brought about that it showed how much they enjoyed doing the Eibusher's mitzvahs. Now, all this brought about that these soldiers should save the world from being destroyed. And he calls these soldiers Tzaddik Yisayid Olam, which is an expression usually reserved for not just regular tzaddikim, but tzaddikim that you find only once in a whole generation, which in essence, all that pain that these soldiers went through is for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. They kept the world going. Now he says that every neshama, because Klal Yisrael is the foundation of the world, is keeping the world going, every neshama has its portion in this world that exists because of the neshama. So the Eibusher makes it sometimes a neshama is tested in his own home, and sometimes a neshama is forced to go out, whether during war or whether during travels. A person is caused to go to a certain spot in order to elevate the sparks that are in that spot, because he's responsible for the existence of that spot in the world. Now, you could say that there's tzaddikim in general in the world, and why do we need to go through to have these specific souls that they should become Cantonists and go serve in the military? He says that there's 600,000 different neshamas, and every neshama is divided up again into 600,000. And it's possible that because the general soul of these 600,000 is not doing any mitzvahs with any feeling, so the Eibusher will cause that just one spark out of that whole neshama should go out and prove itself that it does have feelings for him, and it does have Rusa Deliba, that it wants to be close to the Eibusher. And he says that even if the situation is where there's 1 out of 1,000 soldiers from these Cantonists that ended up serving the Eibusher the way the Eibusher wanted, to have simcha whenever something he was able to do, and pain from not being able to do, and let's say the other 99% fell off the derech, he says first, the Satan has no taina on them that, before you weren't serving the Eibusher properly, because what you did now shows on the past that when you're tzivishim Yidden, that you also don't care. He says the Satan doesn't have that taina, and he says that the neshama, that one soul out of 1,000 managed to accomplish and show the Eibusher that you didn't care about your mitzvahs, so it's enough that one neshama was able to do it for everyone else. And through that, the neshama was able to refine and separate good from bad. Like, in order to bring about the final redemption, you have to separate all good from all bad. And he says, like, when someone puts silver through a refinery, so there's many steps a person could take to try to refine it more and more. Now, if you only go like the first step, you'll end up having that even in the psilus, even in just a raw metal, you'll have pieces of silver sitting inside of that psilus, because it wasn't refined so much. But if you refine it all the way, even in the small psoilos, you won't have the silver sitting there, and which is similar to what we're saying here about even if you only have one neshama that refine the good from the bad, having a fire in his heart towards the Eibishter, that'll cause that even by the ones that didn't make it, that didn't do what they were supposed to do, those other 99% of the soldiers, that the bad is also refined from the good because of that one soldier. And he brings down that by the Egel Azov, these Erev Rav, the fact that they were mixed in between the Yidden, so that's what caused that the mitzvah shouldn't last forever, like we have now during Golus. And if these Erev Rav would be in Mitzrayim, they wouldn't be able to cause the Yidden to sin. So, in order that we should be able to have Torah mitzvah should be forever and ever, you have to separate all good from all bad. And like it says, the Rishoyim have to become so separated that you see that a Rasha is Taka Rasha. He doesn't have any good mixed into him. So he becomes separated on his own that he's bad. Now, there's also a concept that whatever a person puts in now during the times of Galus becomes a Keli for all the Giluyim that will take place in Moshe Mashiach, that'll be on that high level of whatever effort it was put in during Galus. And he says, like, that it appears that the water covers everything across the whole ocean equally, but there are certain parts of the ocean that are deeper than others, and that's because, like we're saying now, that the person made a keli, the preparation for later. Now, this mimer from the Mitteler Rebbe was quoted by our Rebbe, and he brought down that this same concept exists by Russian Jews that were behind the Iron Curtain. The pain they were going through, and they still kept mitzvahs, b'tachas ahider, that they didn't give up even on small things. And the same idea that we're saying now, that because of them, they held up the whole world. A side note is also that the Mitteler Rebbe found out about this gzeira of the Cantonists 7 years prior to it happening. He was by the tzin of the Alter Rebbe, his father, and he told him about it, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. And there was a time where the Mitteler Rebbe was farbring with all the chassidim until the early hours of the morning, and it was very besimcha, and he thought that maybe it pushed away the gzeira. And then when he was dozing off, his father, Alter Rebbe, came to him and told him that this is a serious time, and we can't prevent it.